Let me tell you something. A husband called me not long ago, maybe a year now. Doctors had said that this particular young lady would have to have a double mastectomy. The cancer was so ferocious that it was feeding off estrogen in her body. One of the cancers was bigger than her breast, but it was inside. And according to this particular physician, they were going to have to do this operation. I said, now wait a minute to them. I said, now after you go through this other situation here, when you calm down, I want to tell you something. You don't get one opinion. I don't care if he graduated from Harvard. I don't care if he's got all kinds of clinics all over Sumter, all over Columbia, all over Atlanta. You get a second opinion. But while you're getting that second opinion, I want you to consider God. If I can just get you, to consider God when they say to you that you do not qualify because the score is under 610. You look right back at them and says, well, I know what God said to me. And see, some of the things that God's going to do, he's going to do it by way of flipping a script. I don't have nothing to do with what goes on out there in the secular world when it comes to how they look at business. Now, they do what they have to do, but God. Grandma say he has a way that's mighty sweet. The God that I serve, after you have considered him, can take his geovistic fingers and go inside of your body, who, by the way, he created, and he can move the kind of cancer, the kind of blood problems, does it without any sutures. Oh my God. Walk into an office where people are filling out applications on the computer, and the devil whispers in your ear and says, you are just as crazy. Ain't nobody getting hired because there's too many people applying for the same job. But God says, stay here and do what I tell you. Fill it out. And then all of a sudden somebody walks in from the back. Is that Clara? Is that Clarice? Clarice? Is that Jimmy? And you're looking and say, yeah, it's me. What are you doing here? And when, make a long story short, they say, look, what happened? Say, I came on, somebody told me that you all were hiring. I didn't even know you work here. Oh, I've been working here for 20 years. If I hadn't known that you wanted a job, that's why it pays to stop being antisocial. Sometimes your hookup is right in your own church. In some companies, they're not even considering your resume yet. That's coming. But because you know Emma, how long have you known Buffalo? You mean to tell me you and Butch grew up together? Well, if you're a friend of Butch's, you need to come here this afternoon. I'm going to tell the manager. That's why you got to be careful who you roll with. I'm almost through now. Y'all done got me out of here because somebody's favorite's in here tonight. Oh, you better tell me to sit down. But somebody's favorite, and I'm God's favorite. I may not live where you live, drive what you drive, have on the shoes you wear. I may not look like you. I don't know Tyra. I don't know Stevie. But one thing I know God. See, some of them didn't remember what I used to say. Don't mess with Bill. Okay, leave that alone. You're in church. You let people keep on picking. Let them make you out whatever they want to say, whatever they want to do, I want you to remember you're on a path right now. You have become focused, and you can always tell because of you being focused, the enemy wants to distract you. If he can get you to, you know what? If God told you a new car, why are you trying to get a used one? I told you to consider God. And by the way, what I first said, the young lady's test came back. She was cancer free. After going through the chemo, they didn't have to remove it. I'm going to tell you something. While I'm talking, somebody's body, somebody's situation has shifted. And if you believe it, you ought to get up and go to somebody and tell him he's talking about me. How do you make it? The question is, don't y'all do this to me tonight. The question is, how did I make it? God did it for me. Look at somebody and tell them, I considered God. See, I'm of the persuasion that I can do all things. Do y'all still believe that I can do some things? You ought to open your mouth up and say all things through who? Who does what? Y'all take your seat for a minute. I feel like running and no one's chasing me. I feel like throwing my hands up and telling everybody that God is great and greatly to be praised. The question is, how did you make it? I'll get to that in a minute, but let me tell you something. How do you make it, brother? Sister, how did he make it? Brothers sell you to strangers. It's all in the text. And the strangers sell you to someone else. And the someone else's wife lies on you. They call it sexual harassment. And you end up thrown in jail on Trump charges. And look at your neighbor and say, neighbor, to make matters worse, not only you're left there in prison, you see. You make friends with the friends who are friends with big shots. And then they leave you in prison. That's what makes matters worse. And before Joseph got better, you see, you got to be careful that when you're going through and when you're being processed, that your experiences don't make you bitter or become bitter. But you've got to say like the scripture says, according to Romans 8:28. See, y'all pushing me too fast now. And we all know that all things. Look at your neighbor and say, neighbor, all things. And the last time I checked, all things were, all is the totality. Everything, good, bad, indifferent. The good report and the bad report made me what I am. If I had not gone through it, I would not know that he's able to bring me out of it. And you ought to tell your neighbor, say, neighbor, I've got a story to tell you. Through many dangers, you better tell me to sit my black self down. Through many dangers, trials and snares.